දවස් 30ක්ම unlimited Netflix බලන්න. Unlimited data pack එකක් මුළු පවුලටම unlimited fun එකක් අරගන්න. අදම active කරගන්න.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, readying for business. Deputy Director General Public Health Services outlines measures to be implemented ahead of airport reopening.
The guidelines are being prepared and this will ensure that there will be no leakage of the disease into the general community.
Too little, too late. Swiss government express regret after study reveals years of ignoring illegal Sri Lankan adoptions. Where is she? More unanswered questions over the whereabouts of the elusive Pulastini Mahendran, alias Sarah Jasmine, at Easter Commission proceedings. Another feather in our cap. Sri Lanka gets a new feathered resident after Colombo Uni researchers identify a hitherto undiscovered bird species.
We discover a new species of bird. We call it a Hanuman plover.
All this and much more coming up on this Wednesday, the 16th of December 2020.
Nava sunlight sakura. Then Dikukal pavathina sakura mal suwandin.
Try out our new product range. Celebrate and feel the difference with Bairaha.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando. Moving on to your top stories for tonight. Following a study carried out by a Swiss university that showed serious irregularities in adoptions from Sri Lanka, the Swiss government has expressed regret over the inability of successive governments to address the issue. The study found that Swiss authorities turned a blind eye to the adoptions, having had knowledge of the child smuggling racket as far back as 1981.
The Swiss government has expressed regret over the inability of successive governments to prevent illegal adoptions of Sri Lankan children carried out throughout the 1990s. An investigation carried out in February by the Zurich University of Applied Sciences on the subject uncovered a long-standing pattern of illegal adoptions of up to 11,000 Sri Lankan children to parents across Europe. The study also found that Swiss authorities turned a blind eye to the adoptions, having had knowledge of the child smuggling racket as far back as 1981. The Swiss government, in a statement released this week, said that the Confederation waited too long before taking appropriate action against the irregularities. The issue reportedly came to light several years ago after several adult Swiss nationals of Sri Lankan origin adopted during the 1980s and 1990s who returned to the island to seek out their birth parents discovered that information contained in their adoption files were false. The study also showed that a total of 881 adoptions were granted between 1973 and 1997 in Switzerland, with intermediaries in Sri Lanka pocketing generous fees, while the children's families received little. The Swiss Federal Council also wants to see whether irregularities have occurred elsewhere and has promised to amend the law if necessary. Switzerland only recently acknowledged the suffering of Swiss children who were taken away mainly from poor families and single mothers and were made to work on farms as late as the 1960s. The government pledged to provide greater financial and psychological support for adoptees searching for their origins and intended to launch a broader historical analysis of possible illegal adoptions in the country.
Safeguard hand sanitizer. නවතම නිෂ්පාදන පෙළ නීරෝගිමත් දිවියකට. ලංකාවේ පළමු වරට හඳුන්වා දෙන මැලිබන් වෙජි ක්‍රැකර්.
Crunchy veggie.
The Secretary of the Ceylon Tawheed Jamaat, Abdul Razik, who was summoned before the Easter Commission for the second day today, claimed that the whereabouts of Sarah Jasmine, the wife of Katwa bomber Mohammadu Hassoon, were unknown to him. The witness told the Commission that Sarah Jasmine, whose original name was Pulastini Mahendran, went through her conversion against the wishes of her family at the Ceylon Tawheed Jamaat office in 2015, but later in 2016 informed him of her having left the Islamic faith.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry investigating the Easter Sunday attacks heard evidence from the Secretary of the Ceylon Tawheed Jamaat, Abdul Razik, for a second day yesterday. At the outset, the chairman of the commission asked the witness if he possessed the authority to issue documents pertaining to the changing of a person's religion. The witness replied, the conversion to Islam can be done in about half an hour if a person has the will and the understanding of its principles. All that is required is for a text to be read out in front of two people. We have documented hundreds of such conversions. To this, the senior state counsel at the commission asked him, did you know an individual named Hastun and his wife Pulastani Mahendran, alias Sarah Jasmine? The witness replied, yes, on August 4, 2015, they arrived at the Ceylon Tawhid Jamaat headquarters in Maligavatta. They told us that they were romantically involved. Sarah Jasmine also asked if she could convert to Islam. The chairman of the commission then asked him, you are testifying before this commission under oath. Please tell us the truth. Despite you claiming that they arrived together to your office, the commission has evidence that Hastun was already at your office, while Sarah Jasmine arrived there by herself. The witness responded, no, Hastun's village is Ottamavadi, while Sarah's village was Kalavanchikudi. They arrived together. To this, the senior state counsel asked the witness, if you claim that a conversion can be carried out simply by reading a text, why would they travel over 300 kilometers just to do so at your organization? The witness replied, we post photographs of individuals who convert to Islam. That is how they discovered us and sought us out. The senior state counsel then questioned the witness, did you inquire about Sarah Jasmine's guardian at the time? To this, the witness stated, at that time, Sarah Jasmine asked that the organization take over her guardianship. I then contacted her mother's brother and informed him of this. The following day, on August 4th, her mother and other family members came to our headquarters and asked to take her away. However, Sarah didn't agree to this. To resolve this, I visited the Maligavatta police station. There, her mother was given permission to take her home for 5 days. Later, on September 24th, they visited our office again. They told us that they wanted to get married. When I contacted her family, they told us not to marry them. However, as Hastun was 21 years old and Sarah was 18 years old, we married them. I became her guardian. The chairman of the commission then asked the witness, did Sarah's mother contact you again after this event? The witness replied, in early February or March 2019, Sarah's mother called me and asked me if I was aware that Sarah was not with them. I told her we had no contact with her after December 31st, 2015. Her mother then told me that she had had no contact with her after she had last spoken to her from Narammala. After this, I gave the Terrorist Information Division a photograph of her and asked them to locate her as she was reported missing. However, they were unsuccessful. In January 2016, Sarah sent us a registered letter. In the letter, she informed us that she had distanced herself from Hastun and the Islamic faith. She also stated that she had made a statement to this effect at the Kalmane police station. Following this, when the senior state counsel asked the witness if he was aware of Sarah Jasmine's current whereabouts, the witness responded in the negative.
At a meeting with the Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, today Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa instructed officials to fast-track the construction of houses for victims of the Easter Sunday attacks. The discussion centered on relief measures for the victims who are still suffering from injuries and economic hardships as a result of the attacks.
A discussion was held between Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, at Temple Trees today. At the meeting, the Prime Minister instructed the State Engineering Corporation to recommence and fast-track the construction of 24 houses in the Katuapitiya area for the victims of the Easter Sunday terror attack. In addition, the Prime Minister's office also revealed that 5 more houses will be constructed by the Urban Development Authority for victims who own land in the Katuapitiya area. Further, the Prime Minister also instructed officials to allocate 33 houses from proposed Housing Development Authority schemes for 33 families affected by the attack who are currently living in rented houses around Colombo. In addition, the Prime Minister also agreed to provide housing to 11 more families affected by the attack, residing in Badulla, Kandy and other parts of the country. The Prime Minister also instructed the Director General of Health Services to expand medical facilities provided by the Sri Jayawardhanapura Hospital to victims of the attack and to provide them with the necessary medical treatment and hospital room facilities. Further, the Prime Minister also instructed the completion of the Katuapitiya Sunday School premises funded by the Ministry of Finance at a cost of over 60 million rupees. The Prime Minister also instructed officials to complete the construction of the Kochikare Church damaged in the attack by allocating the necessary funds to the Navy as planned.
The COVID-19 infected patient who escaped the National Hospital for Respiratory Diseases in Valisara while receiving treatment was located by the police in Maradana this afternoon. Meanwhile, Deputy Director General of Public Health Services Dr. Hemanta Herath outlined the series of new measures to be implemented at the airport ahead of a possible reopening for international travellers in the coming weeks. Sri Lanka saw 688 COVID-19 cases reported during the course of yesterday across 18 districts. Unsurprisingly, the district of Colombo once again topped the list with 309 cases. The Kalutara district confirmed 119 infections, while Gampaha reported 104 cases. 21 foreign repatriates were also included among yesterday's infections.
At present, most of the cases from clusters erupted early October have been now reduced, and the subsequent subclusters like the Colombo Municipal Council area are also now going down. But we have observed minor clusters all over the country in different parts in small numbers due to the constant movement of people from these high-risk areas to low-risk areas. As a result, though we are reporting numbers in different parts of the country, the health authorities in those areas are taking the necessary action to control and identify those cases and then to trace the contacts and do the necessary control activities. However, the public is advised to take the maximum precautions as advised by the Health Department and the Ministry of Health, to adhere to the health guidelines published by the Health Ministry.
Dr. Herath also elaborated on the new arrangements to be implemented at the airport ahead of its reopening.
About the arrangements at the airport, we have already declared that the repatriation process is now continuing, and proposals are being now discussed to open the airport for different other categories. And at the moment, still the guidelines are being prepared, and this will be finalized very soon, and that will definitely ensure that there will be no leakage of the disease into the general community through the people coming from the airport. And these guidelines will be very soon published and it will be available to the public.
Meanwhile, 3 new COVID-19 fatalities were reported this morning, raising the death toll to 157. All 3 deceased are above the age of 60 and are residents of Colombo 14 and Colombo 15. In another development, a COVID-19 infected man who was under treatment at the National Hospital for respiratory diseases in Valisara escaped last evening, but police acted swiftly to recapture the patient today.
That particular person had admitted to the hospital for tuberculosis. Later, he was found as a COVID positive case. This person had disappeared by 3:30 yesterday. Accordingly, the medical officers had informed Mahabagi Police. Mahabagi Police initiated investigation, and it was revealed that the person had given a wrong address to the medical officers on his admission. Then we published the photo on electronic and print media. We were able to trace the person from another address in Maradana area. He has been handed over to the medical authorities of Valisara Hospital at the moment. We have provided security in respect of the patient. However, he has committed offences under the penal code and under the quarantine law. He has provided false information to a medical officer, government officer. Apart from that, he has committed an offence called cheating by personation, and in addition to that, he has made forged document. So if a person is found guilty of the said charges, the court could impose 5 years rigorous imprisonment and a fine. We are taking action to file charges against him after his treatment and quarantine period.
In more news, an expectant mother who is also a police officer attached to the Hangwalla police station has been diagnosed with COVID-19 following a test conducted at the Castle Street Hospital today. The public health inspector in charge of the Hangwalla area stated that although the patient did not visit the police station for the past 4 days, 10 police officers she came into contact with have been quarantined as a precautionary measure. The husband of the infected police officer is attached to the Navagamur police station and has been placed in self-quarantine. The government in the meantime declared Thotavatta in Panadura and Badalkumbura and Alupota in Unaragala as isolated areas with immediate effect. Our correspondent stated that upon the news breaking, the majority of residents in Thotavatta were seen leaving the area. The police, however, claimed that no such incidents have been reported so far. It was also observed that no action had been taken to isolate the area even by this afternoon. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 task force chaired by Minister of Health Pavitra Vanniyarachi met this morning to discuss steps to be taken in view of the current situation. During the meeting, it was decided to immediately convert hospitals with higher patient capacities and the necessary facilities to treat patients into coronavirus treatment centres. It was also revealed that approximately 14,000 PCR tests and 3,000 antigen tests are being carried out on a daily basis, covering all districts including Colombo, Gampa and Kalutara. What's more, health authorities have now placed the country's overall COVID-19 cases at 34,447, including 8,638 active cases. Meanwhile, recovery surged past the 25,000 mark after 785 more patients were given the all-clear to return home. State Minister of Bus Transportation Services Dilum Amunugama warned that bus operators who violate the new mandatory health and safety guidelines for passenger transportation could face route permit cancellations. The State Minister added that the passengers can exercise their right to object to any violations by bus operators and can report them to the Ministry for action. The Director General of Health Services, Dr. Asela Gunawardena, has issued a set of mandatory COVID-19 health and safety guidelines for public transport operators to follow. The guidelines include a mandatory maintaining of social distancing and a limiting of passengers according to the seating capacity of each bus. However, this move has earned the ire of bus unions who claim that the new regulations are impossible to follow and requested a further hike in bus fares to cope with the halving of passenger numbers.
අපි යෝජනාව ඉදිරිපත් කළේ ආසන සංඛ්‍යාවෙන් හරි අඩකට බස් රථවල යන්න ඉඩ සලසන්න එම ගාස්තුව අද සුභෝගී ගාස්තුව ලබා දෙන්න කියලා. නමුත් මෙතන අපි දැක්ක දිගින් දිගටම ප්‍රවාහන අමාත්‍යාංශය කටයුතු කළේ පරිදි වැටහීමක් අරගෙන ඒ වගේම සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශය පරිදි නිර්ණායකයන් ඉදිරිපත් කළා තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා බස් රථවල යනකොට ඒ ආසාදිතයන් ළඟින් බාඩලා යනකොට කොවිඩ් හැදුනාම ඒ වගකීම සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයත් ප්‍රවාහන අමාත්‍යාංශයත් ගන්න ඕන.
Meanwhile, State Minister of Bus Transport Services Dilum Amunugama says that buses are found to be in violation of the new safety guidelines will be strictly dealt with according to the laws, while route permits will be suspended as well.
අපි ලීසින් සහනේ දීලා තියෙනවා. සියලුම log sheet charges දඩ මුදල් මේවා අය කරගන්න එපයි කියලා අපි කියලා තියෙනවා. මේක අපව වහලා දාන්න සිද්ධ වුණොත් මොන ගාස්තුවටවත් දුවන්න හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ බස් රථ. ඒ නිසා කරුණා කරලා මේ නීති පිළිපදින්න තමන් වැඩිපුර මුදලක් ගෙවලා යන නිසා ඒ බස් රථය තුල හිටගෙන මගින් ප්‍රවාහනය කරනවා නම් තදබදයක් ඇති වෙන ආකාරයේ සෞඛ්‍ය නීති රීති උල්ලංඝනය කරමින් මගීන්ටත් අයිතියක් තියෙනවා මැදිහත් වෙලා මේට විරෝධය දක්වන්න. ඒ අංකෙත් එක දැනුම් දුන්නොත් අපි පරීක්ෂණ කරන්නේ බස් රථයේ මාර්ග බලපත්‍රයේ අක්තිටුව. දිගින් දිගටම මේ තත්ත්වයේ පවත්වාගෙන ගියොත් අපි නැවතත් මූලික ගාස්තුවට ගාස්තු අඩු කරනවා විතරක් නෙමෙයි අඩු කරලා අපි ආසන ගානට පමණ ප්‍රවාහනය කළ යුතුයි කියන නීතිය නැවත අපි ගෙන එනවා.
More news on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
Welcome back. In more news, the Vattala Magistrates Court ordered the cremation of 4 inmates who died during the Mahara prison unrest today after rejecting a burial request submitted by their families. Meanwhile, the post-mortem reports of the 4 inmates presented to the court stated their causes of death as due to injuries from gunshots sustained during the unrest.
A 5-member expert committee nominated by the Attorney General's Department and tasked with conducting postmortems of the deceased Mahara prison inmates were approved by the Vattala magistrate last week. Accordingly, the committee handed over the postmortem reports of 4 inmates to the Vattala magistrate today. The reports showed that the 4 inmates had died from gunshot injuries. Submitted a request to the magistrate for permission to bury their remains. However, State Counsel Nishara Jairatna, representing the Attorney General's Department, objected to the request, stating that the deceased had tested COVID-19 positive during postmortem tests. Further, the State Council added that burials were against government COVID-19 health and safety regulations mandated for the handling of infected remains. After considering the facts presented by both the parties, the court ordered the cremation of the remains of the 4 prison inmates.
COVID-19 වසංගතය ආසාදිත වෙච්ච මృతදේහ භූමදානය කිරීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් කිසිම නීතිමය ප්‍රතිපාදනයක් නැහැ. මා නැවත නැවතත් ගරු අධිකරණයෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටියේ සමාජයේ අනෙකුත් මහජනතාවට වෙන අහිතකර බලපෑම් සැලකිල්ලටගෙන මේ භූමදානය නොකර ආදාහන කටයුතු කිරීමට නියෝගයක් තමයි මා ඉල්ලා සිටියේ. මොකද මේ මරණයට හේතුව දක්වන පශ්චාත් මරණ පරීක්ෂණ වාර්තාව සකස් කරන ලද විශේෂඥ මණ්ඩලය පැහැදිලිවම දක්වා තිබුණා. ඔවුන් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඉදිරි විමර්ශන වලට අවශ්‍ය සියලුම සාම්පල් ලබාගෙන තිබෙනවා. එම නිසා මෙය නැවත ගොඩ ගැනීමේ අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නොමැති තත්වයක් තමයි ඔවුන් සඳහන් කරලා තිබුණේ.
The new Made in Sri Lanka tag was presented to 10 local businessmen by the National Enterprise Development Authority during a ceremony held in Colombo yesterday. The new tag is expected to give local producers a boost and help expand their markets with an official certification of origin. The National Enterprise Development Authority has launched a program to grant a Made in Sri Lanka tag to product manufactured by local entrepreneurs to further develop their markets. Accordingly, the tag was presented to 10 local businessmen at a ceremony held in Colombo yesterday. Further, a theme song titled Made in Sri Lanka and the program's website were also launched at the event.
ඉතිහාසයේ ඉඳලා දේශීය ව්‍යාපාරිකයන්ට අතුන ඉරණම් පිළිබඳ හොඳ අත්දැකීම් සහිතව තමයි අපි අද මේ ආණ්ඩුව බී කළා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ නිසා අපේ ආණ්ඩුවෙනුත් දේශීයත්වයට දේශීය ව්‍යාපාරිකයන්ට හවුවරණක් රැකවරණයක් නැත්නම් අනාගතේ කවදාවත් මං හිතන්නේ නැවත අපේ රටේ මිනිස්සු නැවත ව්‍යාපාර ගැන කල්පනා කරයි කියලා. අපේ රටේ හදන මිනිස්සුන්ගේ භාණ්ඩ ටික විකුණ ගන්න අපේ මිනිස්සු දරන වෑයමට හයියක් දෙන්න ආණ්ඩුවක් හදනකොට ආණ්ඩුවට එරෙහි වෙන්නේ ඒ ආණ්ඩුව ආනෙන තහනම් කරපු ආණ්ඩුවක් ලෙස. ඒ නිසා මේ අභියෝගය අපි සියලු දෙනා ජය ගන්න වැඩ කරන්න අවශ්‍යයි කියන කාරණේ තමයි අපි කල්පනා කරන්නේ.
3 teams of criminal investigation department officials have been deployed to investigate the fire that broke out at the Supreme Court complex yesterday. A fire broke out in a waste material storage area on the ground floor of the Supreme Court complex at around 4:30 p.m. yesterday and was extinguished by the Colombo Fire Brigade and Sri Lanka Air Force. The fire had only destroyed defective material previously used in air conditioners, according to the police media spokesperson DIG Ajit Rohana. No damages were reported to the court's record rooms or any other property at complex. Meanwhile, the expert opinion of the government analyst is to be sought on the incident. In addition, the reports of electrical engineers and police crime scene officers will also be obtained on the matter. Further investigations are being carried out by the CID. Meanwhile, in great news for bird lovers in Sri Lanka, a group of researchers from the Colombo University have discovered a brand new species of plover endemic to Sri Lanka and the Pork Strait region. The bird, named the Hanuman plover, was previously mistaken as a subspecies of the Kentish plover. However, following the team's research, it has been discovered to be a completely separate species.
Sri Lanka is known as a birding hotspot, which acts as a winter destination for countless migratory bird species. Sri Lanka is also home to 463 bird species, and of these, over 30 have been identified as endemic species. The months of November through to April are considered the best months of the year to spot most of them. With that, in exciting news for ornithologists, a new local inhabitant has been discovered by a group of researchers from the University of Colombo, endemic to Sri Lanka and islands in the Pork Strait. The new bird species has been given the name the Hanuman plover to signify the affinity of Hanuman with Rama's bridge and critical areas for shorebirds in Sri Lanka. The new species was earlier considered a subspecies of the Kentish plover. However, research led the team to conclude the subspecies as a separate species.
A group of researchers from the University of Colombo, People's Republic of China, and an undergraduate student from the Department of Zoology of the University of Colombo, together we discover a new species of bird to Sri Lanka. We call it a Hanuman plover or Hanuman olivia in Sinhala because it found in the Pork Bay region of India and Sri Lanka and around Sri Lanka, especially in the Hambantota district and in Mana and Jaffna districts. These birds are small, white, about the size of polkicha or a black robin, and they are long lived, say about 10-12 years in these mudflats. And this particular species that we call Hanuman plover is a new species. Its existence is known for past century as a subspecies of another species called the Kentish plover. The Kentish plover is a migrant, and a population of that Kentish plover breeds in Sri Lanka, especially in the Mana and Hambantota districts. And what we found is that this subspecies actually a new species which has affinities, genetic and phenotypic affinities to the white-faced plover of China and the Kentish plover of Sri Lanka. The scientific paper describing this species is on the way. This is not a simple split, it's a brand new discovery of a new species.
We'll return after this short commercial break. Stay tuned. Welcome back in your business news. November's Purchasing Managers Index has improved to 57.6 index points due to significant increases in new orders in textile and wearing apparel and food and beverages sector manufacturing. Meanwhile, the services sector index edged up to 48.8% for the month, reflecting a slower decline in services sector economic activities compared to the previous month.
The manufacturing PMI bounced to 57.6 in November 2020 with an increase of 17.3 index points compared to October. The significant increase in new orders, particularly in the manufacture of textile and wearing apparel and food and beverage sectors, was the main contributor to the improvement. Increase in the production sub-index, mainly due to the manufacture of textile and wearing apparel and non-metallic mineral products sectors, together with the lengthening of the supply delivery times across all sectors, also contributed to the overall increase. Some respondents in the manufacture of food and beverages and textiles and wearing apparel sectors highlighted that although there was a reasonable or satisfactory demand, they were unable to carry out production at their desired capacity due to lower employee availability. Meanwhile, the suppliers' delivery time sub-index lengthened at a higher pace, mainly due to ongoing delays at the Port of Colombo, where many respondents cited the rerouting of shipments or refusals of acceptance by shipping lines. Further, the services sector PMI edged up to 48.8 in November, reflecting a slow decline in services sector economic activities in November compared to the previous month. However, business activities in wholesale and retail trade, transportation, accommodation and food and beverage subsectors declined with the quarantine curfew imposed in the Western Province in early November.
The All-Share Price Index gained 0.32% or 23.78 points to close at 6,655.67 today, while the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks fell 0.20% or 5.18 points to close at 2,602.49. Meanwhile, the rupee closed weaker at 188 rupees and 42.80 cents to the US dollar today after it was quoted at 186 rupees and 80 cents to 187 rupees and 40 cents yesterday. Let's now take a look at how the currency fared against other major currencies during the day today. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.